Recently, on March 22nd, the CDC updated their ventilation guidelines. This updated guidance can be found on this link here. My overarching impression of this is that it's placing the onus of ventilation improvements on individual people as opposed to corporations and companies. This is all targeted on what the individual can do as opposed to what grocery stores can do, or schools can do, or what businesses could do. Ventilation systems can work in different ways. This is done through three primary methods. The first is by bringing fresh air in and expired air out. An example of this could be something as simple as opening a window. Next, they can filter the air. An example of this would be using HEPA filtration, such as using a Corsi-Rosenthal box or an air purifier. And the third method is by treating the air. This is primarily done with UV sterilization. An important thing in considering ventilation is to make sure that there's no stagnant air pockets. This could be a section of a room that would not generally have good airflow. An immediate example in my office would be if I were standing on the inside of my closet. This is a space that would have stagnant air. A good real-world example of this is something like a pharmacy counter. They installed those giant plexiglass boards, which limit the ability of things like spittle and contaminated airflow from customers to travel to the pharmacist. However, that also seals off their area in such a way that it could create stagnant air inside that environment. So while they erected one barrier, they created a new issue because that would be an area of high stagnant air, or even an area of high expired air. Stagnant meaning no flow, and expired meaning there's a lot of CO2 in the air. So the secondary precaution in this pharmacy example would be to have clean air come in and expired air to go out of that area. In their guidelines, the CDC recommends cracking windows open, regularly changing the filters in your air filtration units, ensuring they fit properly, and then maintaining your systems regularly, using MERV13 or higher filters when possible, air purifiers that are an appropriate size for your space, with a Corsi-Rosenthal box being an example of this, which is very large and a good size for my office, this small space, making it appropriate for the conditions that it's being used in. Something that would be inappropriate would be using a small air purifier like this, thinking that it's going to clean and purify everything in my office. It's too small to do that efficiently. A more appropriate environment for something like this would be in your car. That's the type of smaller environment where you would expect this to have a good effect, or a high efficacy. They also recommend using UV air treatment systems, but that's not a practical recommendation, in my opinion, for the everyday average person, as those systems are very expensive, have a high safety requirement, and require a certain skill set to maintain properly. And they recommend a portable CO2 monitor to help you determine how stale or fresh the air is, where they recommend that anything over 800 ppm for CO2 would be considered stale and that you need to bring more fresh air into the space. And then also to ensure that your exhaust fans in your kitchens and bathrooms work and vent to the outside of your home or building. My kitchen one is a good example of one that does not work well. It's held together by duct tape and drains. So that is the updated CDC guidance for ventilation recommendations.